Good morning, everyone. We're continuing in what we began learning in Torah Or, which is a book written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, and uses a lot of ideas of Kabbalah because the point is to activate the Jewish soul, and to activate the Jewish soul means that we come to love God and have awe of God, and that brings us to do the commandments and to learn God's Torah. The main point the Rebbe wants to point out over here is happiness. That the whole business, the oil that makes all of Judaism work, is happiness. And happiness comes because you feel what God is. You feel how the reality of God and how good God is, and how precious it is to serve God, to be able to do anything for God in this world, and consequently not to think about yourself. And the less that a person thinks about themselves, the happier that a person can be. Which that's why all the Hasidim, they always saw that the main thing of the Hasidim is they're always happy and they're dancing. It's not that they're always happy because they just don't care about anything. They don't care about the world, or they just force themselves to just laugh and dance around all the time for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Because it's better to be happy for no reason than to be sad for no reason. No, that's not the reason. The point of the Hasidim is supposed to be because the Hasidim are followers of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov taught that God is creating everything all the time, constantly, and that we should be grateful for that we really have no real existence on our own, except for that which God is giving us all the time. And you can feel yourself, you're feeling that. So that should make you happy that you're being created, and that you have who to be thankful to. If you don't believe in God, then you think that you're God. So you have to be thinking, okay, a Jew, though, it's a little bit more. A Jew can be happy not only because he knows that he's being created by God, but also that he can repay God, that he can do God's commandments and the Torah, and that makes God happy. That makes God happy and makes him happy. It says you give the nachat ruach to God, to Hashem. Okay, this whole business, though, is begun and continues and facilitated and initiated by Aaron the Kohen. And when did he do this? When he lit the lights, the candles in the Holy Temple. Lighting the candles in the Holy Temple, that made a big spiritual change in the world. One little thing made a big spiritual change in the whole world. When one person did exactly what God wanted in exactly the right place, is it shows that the whole entire world is worthwhile. Huh? Like you said that regularly, one person, from who knows where, Nigeria or something, he wins the he's the fastest runner in the world, or the best boxer in the world, or the smartest person in the world. So everybody in Nigeria says, "Oh, it gives a whole elevation to Nigeria." We see that in Nigeria, the people there are fast and they're strong and they're smart. Everybody in Nigeria. Is it so? Who knows if it's so? Maybe he's an exception, maybe not. But the fact is that there is such a thing. The same thing is one Jew does what God wants. It's for God. It's worthwhile. The whole entire world. I'm creating the whole entire world is worthwhile, and especially the Jewish people. So when Aaron lit the lights in the Holy Temple, he lit the candles in the Holy Temple. So that lit everybody up. Lit up. What does it mean? Lit everybody up. Gave everybody pleasure. Every Jew it was opened for them. The door of pleasure of doing the commandments. And the door of doing the commandments, pleasure from doing commandments is not like any other pleasure in the world. All the other pleasures in the world is you feel pleasure because you receive something. And the pleasure of doing the commandments is you feel pleasure because you give something. You're giving, but here you're giving to your creator. So by giving to God, you're really giving to yourself, but it's not in an egotistical way at all. It's like there's some people that serve their country, right? Serve their country, and there's the best thing they can go and serve their country, even they give their life for their country. They're willing to do it. What do they get out of it? The truth. They did at least how they understand it. Say they're devoting themselves to something greater than themselves. That's a general principle, but especially if it's in the truth, a person that devotes himself to to a country, so that's just a limited thing. But a person that devotes himself to the Creator that's unlimited. So that gives pleasure, and this pleasure is what elevates the commandments. And that's what it says, that Aaron lifted up the commandments. And we said over here in a different language that Aaron was the escort of the queen. Aaron is the escort of the queen. Who's the queen? Me and you, Jewish people. And Aaron escorted us. What does it mean? Like at a wedding, you have to escort the bride and the groom because they're sort of weak on their own. That's the way ideal it's supposed to be. And so you give them happiness. You escort them, give them happiness. The same thing as Aaron. He's the one that he lights the lights in the holy temple. And by means of this, it opens up the door for happiness to us. So here we go. Let's go. Behold, this pleasure that you get when you do the commandments. Remember we said, Asher Kiddishana b'mitzvosav. Asher means happiness. There's a tremendous happiness and pleasure in doing the commandments because it's like a wedding. Kiddishanu is like a wedding. Every time you do a commandment, this pleasure that we get by doing the commandments, shalochi, and therefore nimshlim mitzvahs. Therefore, the commandments are compared to narrow to these lights, these lamps that go up to flame up. Let me make this a little bit bigger over here. 1 minute. There it is. Too big, too much of a good thing. There it goes. Okay, this pleasure that we said, that there's inherent in the commandments, that you do, that you connect to God. The word commandment means a connection. When you do a commandment, you're connecting to the Creator. And therefore, the commandments are compared to candles, to lamps. They just like by means of shemadlikim at the nerot, by means of lighting up a lamp, a fire, a lamp with fire in it. But by means of lighting the nitmale habayat, or the house becomes filled with light, viziv, and rays of light. Kach, the same thing by means of the commandments. When you do commandments, you're drawing down light. You're lighting up the whole world. We don't see it. And it's because the world is too thick. We just don't see it. It's too distracting. It's like trying to listen to the radio when there's all the static going on, right? When you're in your house and the washing machine's going on and the children are screaming and everything. You can't hear anything. So you want to hear the program. What do you have to go up to the higher floor? But there's no kids. There's no bothers. Same thing. When you do a commandment, it's really a tremendous revelation. But this world is so confusing and so disturbing that you can't perceive it. And part of the world is also our body and our natural soul and our desires. It says, but up in heaven, it's like on a higher floor, but there's not these disturbances. So all these revelations there are eternally by when we do a commandment. And what's the revelation up there? Pleasure, happiness, and happiness. And there's not too many things that make us happy in this world. But one thing is money. Money makes you happy. So you look in your bank account and you think you only have $100, and you look and there's another zero. Wait, there's thousands. You feel good. You call it the bank. Is there a mistake? No. Someone put in $900 into your bank account, and it's yours. Oh, you feel happy. Right? It's a good thing. Why? You get pleasure, and pleasure makes you happy. Pleasure that's what happens when you do a commandment. When you do a commandment, you draw this tremendous pleasure into the world. It's only perceived in the upper worlds. But nevertheless, but you should understand you're doing it. Why? Because the Rebbe is telling us we believe what the Rebbe says. You're drawing this tremendous pleasure up in heaven. Now, again, the point was, you'll see many times in the Chassidut that there is such a thing as heaven, and after you die, you go to heaven, and there's such a thing as rewards, but it's almost not talked about at all, because it's thinking about going to heaven does not make you happy. Thinking about going to heaven is a very egotistical, besides thinking about that means that you have to die. But it's a very egotistical thing because you're thinking about what I'm going to get. I'm going to get. And what it's talking about here is that in Gan Eden, up in heaven, is a little bit of a revelation of what happens when we do the commandments. A little bit of a revelation. In this world, it's not revealed at all, but in heaven, it's revealed. But the main thing is not the revelation. The main thing is the source of the revelation. Why is there pleasure in heaven? Because we're making God happy. And that's the main thing. You can only make God happy in this world by doing his commandments. And a little bit of reward you get. And therefore, it says, since because you did not serve God, with joy and a good heart, mirov call. It says in Parshat Kitavo, in the book of Deuteronomy, so it says over there all these terrible curses that God has up in store for the Jews if they don't do what he wants. If they don't do what he wants. And we see that God has used all these, the Jews have experienced these terrible things. And it says over there, you want to know one of the reasons why, because you did not serve God besimcha b'tuv levav, with joy and a good heart, mirov call, from great abundance. So you should have had between. The simple meaning is that God has given you great abundance. He gives you the land of Israel, and he gives you clothes, and he gives you a house, and he gives you a family, and he gives you health, and he gives you all these things, and he's giving you all these, he's giving you everything, and all he wants is that you should give back to him, right? You've been from all this rove call, from all this great, the riches that you have. You don't serve God with happiness, you should be happy. That's a simple meaning, right? God said, okay, I've given you everything, and you're not giving me anything back, and that's it. I'm stopping. The free ride is over, right? No more free gifts. That's why you're getting all these terrible punishments. I'll let the goyim take over. You'll see how I've been protecting you from all these nations, because you're not serving God with happiness. That's a simple meaning. That's a simple meaning. Because from great abundance you have, spiritual, physical abundance, is you're thinking about yourself. You're still selfish. You're not doing what I want and serving me with joy. Therefore, I'll let your enemies, and that's all these curses that happen. That's a simple meaning. But there's the Arizal says it like this, that the meaning is much more, God is much more, severe than what we can possibly think. You should be serving, every Jew should be serving God, with more happiness than rove call. What's rove call? Rove, this is the pleasures of the world to come, of heaven. You're supposed to be happier doing the commandments, the commandments you're supposed to do with greater joy than you would if you were given the news, good news, you're going to receive all the pleasures of the world to come. Doing a commandment in this world should be more happy and valuable to you than all of the possible pleasures you can get in all the world. Now, if you think about it, all these other religions in the world, people are doing everything. They're dancing, they go into world, they fast, and they go into war, and they mortify themselves just in order to go to heaven. Oh, you're going to go to heaven? That's the best thing in the world. Go to heaven. So going to heaven motivates billions of people, right? Because the pleasures that are waiting for us to go to heaven, billions of people. Judaism comes to say, don't do it. If it prevents you from killing and stealing and this, going to heaven, going to hell, right? If that's the only thing that'll do reward and punishment, that's okay. But you should know that's not genuine. That's not genuine. And being genuine is being connected to the Creator. Being connected to the Creator, doing things for the Creator. That's genuine. What about what we get? Look at what we've got. Look what you're alive. You have eyes, you have nose, you're being created all the time. That's not enough for you. You want more. Think about everything God's giving us. And you should be thankful to God for everything. Now, says the Rebbe, you have no idea what God is giving you. God is also, all the pleasures in heaven are waiting for you. You did commandments, you get all these pleasures in heaven. Says, oh, that's pretty good. What's even more? It says, forget about all of it. You should be happy that you can serve God. Not just that you're alive. That's what it means. Simcha, mirov call, joy. When a person, how can a person be so happy? A person has to put to his heart like this. Think. You want to have this happiness more than all the happiness of the world to come, a bigger motivation than going to heaven with all the pleasures of heaven. How are you going to get that? Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you. Take it to heart. Ki b'shamayim mimal, that on the heavens above, v'al ha'oretz mitachas, and on the earth below, I'll call shevach ma'aseh yadecha, that God is over, he's higher than all of these deeds of his hands. All of his handiwork. What's God's handiwork? B'shamayim mimal, that's Gan Eden Elyon. That's what's called the upper heaven. In Kabbalah, it's called the world of Bria. V'al ha'oretz mitachat, and on the earth below, that's what's called the world of Yetzirah. These are two heavenly levels, spiritual levels. And hashevach miyam, the praise of these things, of going to heaven. These are just God's handiwork. Right? Like a kid comes from school and he says, look, Dad, look, Mommy, what we did, there's a picture of a stick man over there with a face, right? And that's a big one. And then there's a little smaller one with a smiling face of a stick man. So they asked me to draw a picture of Mommy and Daddy. This is what I drew. A picture that a 3-year-old, 2-year-old child could draw that. And then that's a picture. You compare that to a real artist, but the parents, oh, they're so happy. Isn't that nice? Isn't that a nice picture? Well, but the fact of the matter is, anybody else looks at this picture and they'll say, okay, very nice. Isn't that cute? Isn't it? Right? How much is the picture worth? Absolutely nothing. You would hang it on your wall? No way. The parents, maybe. Says that's the way we should look at heaven. Somebody else's picture. Very nice. Isn't that cute? Isn't that wonderful? Going to heaven, wonderful. You get all these pleasures. The whole thing is nothing. The whole thing is only God's handiwork. It's just like God scribbled something. Like you're talking on the phone, you scribble something. Says that's what the heavens and the earth, the heavens above and the earth below, that's what's called the upper heaven, and the lower heaven, Gan Eden Elyon, upper. The all praise of them is just that they're your handiwork. Come on, Derek Moshe, just like Shemeshabchim Adam, just like you praise a person by Ma'aseh Yadav with what he did with his hands. Eich Shehu Kotev, how he writes Gadol, nice big letters, or Shemetzayer Tzir Noah, we can make a picture. Shashevach Hazeh, that this praise that you give him, it's not relevant to his wisdom. He has a nice handwriting, right? That shows how smart he is. Velo Mahuso, not to the person's essence. You can take the picture and tear it up. That doesn't affect the person. The whole thing is, also all the praise that we praise, that God has the upper heavens, the neshamos, where the souls are, litaneg, that they get pleasure on God, baskalatam, when the souls are aware, the angels also. All this praise that the souls give and that the angels give, this is just they're just praising God's handiwork. Levad alone. It's like saying how smart Albert Einstein is because he knows how to tie his shoes. Right? And infinitely, God, you create the heavens, the spiritual levels, all these amazing spiritual levels you read about in Kabbalah, and these spiritual amazing things. It's just God's handiwork. That in this, yesh lahem haskala v'hasaga, that all these upper worlds, the souls and the angels, they have a little bit of understanding. They can grasp God a little bit. Ziv hanimshach, just a little ray of godliness. In the upper worlds is revealed a little ray of godliness. Now the Rebbe is not trying to come and tell us about how worthless going to heaven is. Going to heaven is a very wonderful thing, and it's a very worthy motivation for doing everything. For being a good person and turning away from bad. But the fact of the matter is it's childish. It's childish. It's like telling children that they should, be good because you're giving them a candy, right? Don't lie, don't cheat, don't beat other little kids up. Why? And it's because if you do, you're not going to get a candy. So he says, okay, I won't be, but that's not the reason you're supposed to do it. That's maybe childish. It's supposed to be because you value life and you value other people. And that's why in this case, he values a candy. The same thing as serving God to go to heaven. It's like serving God because he'll give you a candy. He'll give you candy. Says the fact of the matter is the heavens and the highest of heavens, the heavens above the heavens, those deep Kabbalistic levels and revelations of the essence of God and etc., etc. All of this is just a little ray of godliness. a little ray of godliness from the commandments. The commandments, that's called the handiwork of God. What do you mean? The commandments are the handiwork of God? Yes. When we do a commandment, when you do a command, and when we do a commandment, lamata below at the root of the leilu, God reacts. It says that God puts on tefillin. God heals sick. God blesses the ears. God gives life with kindness. There's the whole entire business depends on us. When God created the world, he did it on his own. But when he created man, so he said, from now on, I want a partner. From our good deeds, that's what draws down a ray of godliness in heaven. To get pleasure from God, in the awareness and the understanding that the angels and the souls get over there. What do they get? From a little array of godliness that we do by means of doing the commandments. So when a Jew does a commandment, it affects the essence of God, and a little bit of this sort of dribbles down to heaven. But what comes into heaven, all these pleasures and things like that, that's like the leftovers. But Kama Mine Madrigas, there's so many different levels of spirituality and godliness, one above the other. Haskala Zu, understanding this, Bakama Mini Tainugim, and all these different levels of pleasure, of godliness and pleasure, reality. Ad Ein Kates, Sheish Kama Mini Gan Eden. There's many levels, many levels, thousands, millions of levels of heaven. Hagam, even though that in the books is usually only mentioned two, what's called the upper heaven, lower heaven, and the upper heaven, Gan Eden Tachton, Gan Eden Elyon. But the rabbis say Talmudic Chachamim, they say the Talmudic scholars, Ein lem menucha, they have no rest. Sheneamar, like it says, V'yilchu michal ochel, they go from level to level. Ba'alzen, on this, it says, it was constantly elevating. Ba'alzen, Ne'amar, it says, Kikol b'shamayim v'oretz, all in heavens. This is basically everything, right? Everything there is like in the infinite levels. They have the sports and mathematics. I think I told you about this before, but to me it was very impressive. They had what was called the Manhattan Project, which was in America. They wanted to make the atom bomb, so they got all these great physicists together from all the world. I think that all of them were Jewish in the end. I think maybe anyway. They got all these physicists all together, and I don't think there's one of them that was religious, but they were all Jewish. But that's a side point. In any case, these were the greatest, professors and great minds. But there were certain ones of them that were like, that there was a whole sort of an order of them. And there were certain among, they say that Niels Bohr, for instance, Albert Einstein, these were like, the top of the top. But to me, the bottom of the bottom is infinitely greater than me. I know nothing about physics, nuclear physics, nothing whatsoever, right? To me, they're the highest, but the fact is within them, there's all these different levels, even in the most mundane things. Physics is a mundane science. Says the Rebbe, that's also the way it is up in the heavens. The heavens are more complex in some ways than this world is, in some ways. Because there's infinite numbers of spherot and infinite interreactions, and there's no limitation. In this world, there's limits. There's a limit how many atoms there can be in this physical world, a limit. And there's no limit number of angels and things like that. So it says there's infinite numbers of this of types of pleasure. All of these are being created by God. They're all being Al-Zen Ne'amar, it says Kol b'shamayim v'oretz. It says everything in the heavens and the earth. Targum achid shamayim v'oretz, that God is one in the heavens and the earth. He's creating the whole entire business. All of this diversity, trillions to the trillionth power of diversity, that every atom is in a different place, and everything one, it's all be a creation of God. Now, why God makes things so complicated, I have absolutely no idea. But I also have no idea why God makes anything. Why is he creating anything? Why is he creating me? I don't know why, right? This is the story of the Torah. This is the fact. That's the fact of the business, right? Why are your eyes in the front of your head? Why don't people have four eyes on the back also in the front? That's what God wants. Why do dogs bark and cats go meow? That's the nature of it. That's the way that God made things. Why God made things like this, I don't know. But the point is that it all revolves around the Jewish people doing what God wants. That's what it says in the books. Sheyesh Amud, that there's a pillar that goes from the upper heaven to the lower heaven, or from the lower heaven to that it says they go from the upper heaven to the lower heaven. That this joins the upper heaven with the lower heaven. There's so many different levels of these elevations and pillars and pipes and connections that go from one level to the other. There are all sorts of different levels of tzaddikim, and each one has his own level of awareness of God and different level of pleasure. And all these different levels are so tremendously complicated. The levels of pleasure and reality and good and blessing, infinite above one the other. Like it says, there's 50,000 yovelos. Yovelos is 50 years, and there's 50,000 years. And this is 50 years. This is just a spiritual term that he's talking about. All of this is raising up. Nevertheless, this whole entire business with all the pleasures and the different levels of pleasures and higher and higher and higher, this is just like a little ray of godliness, which was drawn down from Maise Yadav Bamish, God's handiwork. This is just God's handiwork. This is just things God does, like, doodling on when he's talking on the phone. But God himself, Mamish Ba'atzmuto Umahuto, God's very essence, which is infinitely more real than we're being created. It's infinitely more real than all the heavens. Like we've said so many times, God does not really exist. He creates all existence, spiritual, physical, so it's incomprehensible. God's essence, no thought can possibly grasp God. Hamalachim, the angels, they say that God is holy, moved, he's incomprehensible. Because of this, it says that there's different types of angels. There's ophanim, there's what's called the wheels. They have a big noise. These angels, the lower angels, they're saying, where is the place of God's glory? But God is so infinite, he's above the whole thing. That's talking about the creation. But the commandments, they're directly to the Creator. All these levels of creation, these are levels in a certain degree of selfishness. They feel themselves. But the commandments, that's totally pure godliness. The commandments themselves, this is like the light of a lamp, that from it comes all of these worlds, comes the rays. So that's what it means, ner mitzvah, Torah or. It says the Torah and the commandments, they are the source of the light, which in this case, the light is all these worlds and all these levels of reality and creation. God's making. It all depends on we Jewish people doing the commandments. Well, a commandment that touches the essence. The commandments, when a Jew does the commandment, that is the source of this ray of godliness, which is called, this is the ray of godliness, because the commandments are called the limbs of God. These are the limbs of God himself. So in other words, a person can't say, thank you for giving me that charity. I did not give you the charity. I'm sorry, I did not give you the charity, but you did. I just saw you. That was not me. That was my hand gave you the charity. That was not me. Right? A person hugs his children. He hugs his best friend. It's not me hugging you. It's my arms hugging. That's ridiculous. When I want to give charity, I do it through my hands. When I want to hug somebody, I do it through my arms, but it's me that's doing it. The same thing, the commandments. The commandments are God's limbs, but that is God really. This is a vessel for God himself, just like my arm is a vessel for me. Look, and therefore, B'kol mitzvahs, all the commandments, it says, Lifnei Hashem, that you do the commandments, it says before Hashem. Lifnei, before God. Lifnei Hashem Bamish, you're really before God, like it says, and also Lifnei also means inside. It says, let I command you today. That's the 10 commandments, I. That God commands us. When does he command the commandments? Today. That's in Shema Yisrael, we say. that I command you today. God is commanding us the commandments today. Well, that's not so. I mean, when God gave the Torah, so he gave it like 3,300 and what it is, 30 something years ago, that God's not giving it today. So the Rebbe says that's not so. The commandments are the limbs of God right now. And just like if you hug your grandfather and you say, I give you a hug, grandfather, it says, no, I'm not grandfather. That's your grandfather. That was your grandfather when I gave birth to your parents gave birth to you. That was you. You are now 40 years old. I was your grandfather back then. 30 years ago, I was grandfather. But now I'm not your. But that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's the same thing, the commandments. God gave the commandments a long time ago, but they're not the commandments anymore. That's ridiculous. It's the same grandfather's hand is the same grandfather's hand it was 90 years ago when he was born, right, as it is right now. The same thing with the commandments that God gave. It's the exact same body of God, if you want to call it, as now, as it was back then. That's Anochi. When you do the commandments are above time. The commandments connect ourselves to the essence of God. That's why the Jews have been putting on tefillin for 3,000 years. 3,300 years, Jews have been putting on tefillin. Now, either you can say the Jews are like the most stupid nation in the world. I mean, there's no nation that even comes close to them in foolishness. They've been doing these commandments, putting on these boxes for 3,000 years. Why would they do a thing like that? Why would they put on the commandments for? We can either have to say that they're the biggest fools in the world, that they do this because there's no meaning to it whatsoever. It's just the same thing over, and they only get punished for it. Right? Or we can say, like the Rebbe is saying, that this is pure godliness. It's above understanding. It's the source of all existence, the source of all being. It makes no sense whatsoever, but it's touching on the essence of reality, the essence of good, the essence of love, the essence of life. That's what the commandments are. Like it says, these are the commandments. That's what it means when you have to do them now. When you do that, Anochi, then you connect to Anochi, who atzmuto, God's essence, and who's really Mitzabacha. Now, why are we talking about this? Because we're talking about Aaron giving us joy, lighting our lamps. This is how Aaron, the writings, what the Rebbe is writing over here, that's Aaron writing. In this case, Aaron and Moses are the same. They're unified in the Mashiach. Mashiach is a person that inspires all of the Jews to do the commandments. That's Mashiach. That's one of the jobs of Mashiach. Inspires all the Jews to do the commandments. To do the commandments because they are what God, not what we receive. We don't do the commandments to receive. To do the truth. That's what the commandments are. And to feel the tremendous pleasure there is in not thinking about yourself at all. Only thinking about doing what God wants, becoming a limb of God. And it says that's a tremendous joy when you do the commandments. Gedolah, tremendous le'elokim. That's what it said. You get, there was the punishment because you don't serve God with joy. Mirov kol. Mirov kol means all the pleasures of heaven are nothing compared to doing a commandment. Who aren't so baruch hu mamish. This is the infinite light of God, which is enclosed in the commandments, just like my life is in my hand. Ubiyeter seit mirov kol. This is more than all of the levels of heaven, which were called rov kol. Hainu bechinas kol the achid b'shamayim, namely this level of everything which was unified in the heavens and the earth, the upper Gan Eden, lower Gan Eden, like the rabbis say, yafashachat. The rabbi said, that's what the rabbi said, it's better to do tshuva and a good deeds in this world than kol chai olam haba, than all of the life of the world to come. And here the reason is, the Rebbe is giving one reason, because when you do a commandment, you are connected right now to the essence of God, and that spreads God's pleasure into all the worlds. Why? Because the reason God created the world, and why he's creating the world right now, there's a reason. And when that reason is filled, so God is happy, right? Like let's say Ford makes his automobile factory, and they're producing factories. They put $1 billion into it, and there's 50,000 people that are working there, and he buys steel and everything. But the whole reason that he's doing it is that a car will come out, and someone will turn on the car, and it works. Oh, when he does that, then Henry Ford is happy. Oh, but this is worth, the whole thing was worth the same thing as God made the whole entire world so that the Jews would do his commandments. And when you do doing God's commandments, then that brings the essence of the creator. The name creator is because he's creating everything, all the heavens, but he brings it into the creation. So it depends on us. That's why it says it's better one moment of doing good deeds in this world than all of the life of the world to come. And just to think about it for 1 second, the world to come, that's like the consolation prize. The main prize is to be able to serve God in this world. What's the proof? Because the world to come is only after you die. If Adam had not eaten from the tree, then nobody would die. There wouldn't be any world to come. This world would be higher and higher revelations of the essence of God in this world. How it would be, I don't know. That's what's going to be in the raising of the dead. That's what we're waiting for. Okay, this level of highness, of joy, liyot simcha zu, or from the essence of God, drawn into my soul when I put on tefillin, when I put on kiss the mezuzah, when I give charity. How does this happen? By means of Aaron. Aaron, he's the one that lights the candles. Aaron, I know he lights the lamps. We don't have any Beit HaMikdash. What's Aaron today? So that's what the Rebbe is saying. You're going to see in a moment. What we're reading now, this is Aaron writing. And he's lighting up our lamps. That's our soul. Because Aaron was one of the 7 shepherds of Judaism. Hamafarnasim Memshechim, that they draw down to all of the Jewish people from above, from Or Ein Sof. Aaron is a shepherd. A shepherd feeds his flock. He nourishes and he draws down to all of the Jewish people this joy. And this joy is 2 levels. It says, Arochas aneros, balos aronas aneros. He prepared the lamps in the temple, in this case, the tabernacle. In the tabernacle, he didn't make it into the temple. He died before they went into Israel, right? So it says he prepared the lamps and he lit the lamps. What is this going to be? How is this relevant to us? That Aaron, in other words, the Rebbe, that he prepares the lamps to be lit. And we said those lamps, that's joy in doing the commandments. And he lights the lamp. What does this mean? Well, let's do a little bit more. This is what it means, a yaroch, that he prepares the lamps. This means arucha ushmura belev v'nefesh adam. This means that it is arranged and preserved, unified in the heart of man. Bezochru as Hashem, when he remembers God, b'omkei adat, in the depth of his dat means, how do you say, reality, feeling of reality. But omka liba, in the depth of his heart. Be a gias nefesh, when you think and you exert your soul in thinking about the greatness of God. Kasher tochel nafsho se'et. Okay, what does Aaron give us? Basically, what does Aaron give us? He gives us chasidus. What's chasidut? What is chasidut? Chasidut is a gift from God and a ladder of Jacob, by means of which we can think about God and discover the truth. Discover who we are. Discover who we are. What we really are. There's all these people that write books about health, right? Usually books about health is usually just telling you who you are, right? Who you are. Don't eat sugar, it's bad for yourself. Do eat this vitamin, do eat that vitamin. And then when you do eat that, then you're going to be healthy. And when you're healthy, then you'll be yourself. Then you can be yourself. You won't have to be worried about this pain and about this inability and about this, the weakness and about this trouble and this. You won't have to worry about it, right? You'll be healthy. That's what Aaron gave us with the commandments. He made a healthy body. The commandments are God's limbs. And each one of us, that everything will flow. That we'll be healthy, we'll be happy with godliness. But in order to do this, it's not so easy. Why? Because the angels have no problem. The angels think about God They get it immediately. They understand how far away they are from God, that God is creating them, how wonderful God is. They're yelling, they're screaming, they're crying, they're happy about God. Why? Because they have nothing else to do. There's no interruptions. They feel the truth. They feel the truth. It's like a person that goes into a concert, and the person who's playing beautiful violinist, the beautiful whatever it is, and he's just there. It's just beautiful. He just feels it's beautiful, and there's nothing to disturb him. You can't make any noise. You can't take any pictures. You got this. It's beautiful, right? Just the fact that he's there. The same thing. The world is really very beautiful. Life is really very beautiful, and especially we can, unlike a concert, we can participate. We do the commandments. We do the commandments, but we don't feel the beauty. We don't feel everything because there's so much confusion. So what do we have to do? Aaron has given us a method by means of which we can think about God, and we can think about God, and by means of this, eliminate all of the distortion and confusion, sort of like cleaning our glasses, getting rid of the dirt. That's what Chassidut does. It's a whole method by means of you can think about God as much as you're able to and bring that into your heart. And that, when a person brings these ideas into his heart, God really is creating me. God really does give us the commandments. God really reacts to the commandments. God really is creating all the upper worlds. The upper worlds are infinite pleasure and happiness, and it's all nothing compared to when I do a commandment. How happy I would be just to have a little ray of the upper worlds of heaven. And the commandments make that like a little pebble on the sea compared to $20 billion, right? When you're doing the commandments, but first of all, you have to appreciate what you're doing when you do the commandments. Whose commands? Who's the commander? How God reacts. And think about it. Hey, you have to think about this. When a person thinks about it and takes it to heart, then this pleasure is available to him. And that's what Aaron brings. And this is what we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we can get to the end of this. Let's try it. Let's do it. Here we go. Yeah, we can do it. This is the drawing down this happiness which comes from above in order to elevate the soul. Because that's the thing of Aaron. He elevates. He's the escort of the queen. He elevates us. What do you mean he elevates us? He takes our hand. Taking our hand means he gives us these ideas that we can think about to appreciate God. Well, the kashro, that we can take the soul, we can take our soul and attach it to the source of the soul, to the living God, who's the life of lives, blessed be he, the source of life, the source of all pleasure, which is above the whole entire level of creation, above the soul's ability to even receive. This is what's called loving God with all of your mo'odecha, with all of your being. Hamid Galeh, which is revealed in Shema Yisrael. Well, the Kiyam Kriya Shema, to do what it says in the Kriya Shema, B'kol Me'odecha. In other words, to take it into your mind, I am being created. God is creating me. What this means by thinking about this, taking it to heart, it says then a person can come to the level of saying, well, and I can repay God. I do the commandments. That's even better than God creating me. God creating me, that's b'chol nafshecha, with all of your heart, with all of your soul. B'kol me'odecha, I can do the commandments. I can actually return to God. I can give God pleasure. Therefore, in order to appreciate this, though, first of all, the rabbis established what's called the ladder of prayer. First of all, it starts with Psuki de Zimra. These are Psalms of King David. And then we start to describe God and to think about God. And it says that there's a double-edged sword in our tongue. What does it mean? That when you pray, it says you get rid of the bad things and you start thinking about the good things, what's really important. You get rid of the bad thoughts which come and attack you when you start to pray always, and ignore them. That's the double-edged sword. And that strengthens the soul to ignore and to overpower all disturbances that prevent him from outside and from inside. That's what it says, that Aaron lights the candles, the lamps. He lights the lamps from evening until morning. What does it mean, evening until morning? It says when God creates the world, he created the world one day. The first day we had one day at a time. 7 days, 1 day. What's a day? A day is night and day. In Judaism, the day begins with sunset. So it says, Me'erev ad boker. Bereishach hashukah, when God created the world, first of all, he made it dark. He concealed himself. V'hadar nahor, and by means of our serving God, afterwards there's daytime. First of all, there's night, and then there's day. Shemeir banafsha, that there shines. This happens also to us. That we start off, first of all, we only feel ourselves. That's called night. And then we can start to feel our Creator. That's called the lamp starts lighting up. And that's called happiness. Happiness in Hashem, me'at, little by little, from the darkness. And that's what Aaron gives us, the lighting. That's Aaron arranging the candles, arranging the lamps so that we can light them. And it says that Aaron also lights them. And this we're going to talk about, God willing, tomorrow. And now let us do the Dvar Malchut.